Hi, I'm Tracy Schuhmacher, and I'm here today with Leslie Arduser-Brogan. I said that right? Kind of.
Darn well.
From Casa Larga. Leslie and the folks, well, the people from Casa Larga, I don't know if you specifically, are going to be at the Food and Wine.
We are.
Oh,
we are, absolutely.
I know, event that we're doing on Saturday, the 23rd of September, here at Parcel 5 from 1 to 4. Lots of great wine to taste, food to taste. Duff Goldman doing a demo. He's really cool. I already talked to him. And Thomas Joseph from Martha Stewart's team will be here. So it's a big event, and we need to get prepared. Yeah. So why don't we talk about the right way of tasting wine? All right, can you take us through the proper technique?
Oh, I would love to. The thing I always like to demystify, because sometimes people are intimidated about tasting wine, and the thing I like to say is just remember, it's just a way to introduce you to some of the characteristics of the wine and just heighten your experience. It can be more complicated, but it doesn't have to be. And the other thing to remember too is there's a difference between tasting wine and drinking wine. When you get that little glass of wine from the restaurant that's almost all the way to the top, that's because you're just sitting and drinking it with your food. We're really going to be actually tasting it. So the thing to remember is when you're tasting wine, you really only want to pour about 1/3 of a glass, absolutely no more than 1/2 a glass. And this is going to allow you to do many of the steps that we're going to do right now without sending it all over your friends, yourself, your table,
yeah.
Whatever.
Good point.
So that's about a good quantity to use.
Looks good to me.
So, of course, you may have heard something referred to as the 4 S's. Those stand for see, swirl, smell, sip. So, of course, the first one being see. Literally, what you want to do is you're picking up your glass. Now, first of all, the first thing I want to say is, if you see a wine professional doing this, they're probably looking for fingerprints on the glass. This is not the best way.
Well, that's good information.
It's not the best way to assess the wine. Now, ideally, if you really wanted to be technical about it, if you don't happen to have a white surface, a white piece of paper will do. So we have our white piece of paper.
Okay. And
what you want to do is you want to tilt the glass away from you. And what this is allowing you to do, you're going to look through generally the very edge of the wine.
Okay.
Just various things that looking at the wine will tell you. Is it cloudy? Do you see little bits of sediment in it? Do you see bits of cork? Maybe it was an old cork.
I'm going to say no to all of those.
Okay. And it can also tell you, it might potentially give you a hint as to the age of the wine. This is a generalization, but in general, white wines tend to darken with age. Red wines tend to lighten with age.
Well, I didn't know that about red wines.
So, now, of course, keeping in mind, that's going to depend on how familiar you are with that particular wine to begin with.
Yeah.
So, but all of this, it's going to just give you an idea whether it's a very opaque and dense wine, whether it's a little lighter. Again, not telling you everything about the wine, but just starting to clue you in a little bit. So the next one you want to do is actually one of my favorites. Well, it's my second favorite thing besides tasting the wine, which is smelling the wine. And now, of course, if you're not familiar with swirling wine and you don't want to send it all over your neighbors or yourself, it's perfectly acceptable to just set it on a flat surface and swirl it around. And you want to do this for about a good 10 to 12 seconds.
Okay.
Another thing, you notice I'm holding it by the stem.
Yes.
Generally, you do not want to hold the bowl of a wine glass because if it's a cold wine, you're going to potentially be warming up that wine. You're also obscuring what you can see of the wine with your fingers in the way. So you want to hold it by the stem, give it a little swirl. What this is doing, it's introducing oxygen into those wine molecules. It's basically vaporizing the wine. It's sending it all over the insides of the glass, and that will then evaporate more quickly and allow you to smell it more fully. And so you've swirled your wine around. Now, and everybody thinks, really? And everybody just does this little tentative, no, no, no. You really want to stick your nose right in there so you can fully appreciate the aromas and the scents. And this is going to give you a little clue as to how that wine tastes.
Now, I've heard some people say that they kind of tip their head either way. because one nostril tastes
I have heard
smells better than others?
as well. You know, there's like anything else. There's probably as many different ways to smell a wine, taste a wine, as there are anything else, and it depends on who you ask. I personally prefer just to stick my whole nose in there. It's going to give me
whole nose
in the
wine.
Right in the wine. Well, maybe not in the wine, but in the glass.
Okay, whole nose in the glass.
That might be a little counterproductive. So, and this is going to allow you, again, to get some hints. Yeah,
Okay.
take a good deep breath. Some people say...
It smells wonderful. It smells like wine.
Thank God. Some people say little short sniffs. Some people long, deep breath. But in this case, you know, this is going to tell you, so not to put you on the spot, but what do you tend to notice other than it smells like wine?
Okay, so first of all, I know that you're supposed to make sure it doesn't smell like cardboard, and
Or some like a musty
awful.
basement,
so
right?
it does smell like a pleasing wine.
Do you smell any kind of fruit?
I know I'm terrible at fruit.
That's okay.
Honest and truly.
Do you smell anything that gives a little bit of a fruity aspect to it? I didn't say citrus. I didn't say apples. Do you smell?
I'm going to say
maybe something like
something
dark. Exactly, dark fruits. Maybe even possibly dried fruits.
Like a
Yep.
dried cranberry, but it wouldn't be a tart dried
Yep.
cranberry.
No,
It'd be something,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's
dark.
what smelling the wine will allow you. You'll maybe see some of these crisp whites. You may get some citrus, like the Sauvignon Blancs from New Zealand that you get a lot of grapefruit from, or you get the stone fruits from some of the Rieslings, or some of the dark fruits like plums, or dark cherries, even raisins or figs. So all of that, it's already starting to get your mind working on being able to appreciate that wine more than the whole experience of it.
So as I've learned about tasting and smelling wine, I've started to I think it's kind of like going to the driving range with golf. Like a lot of times you hit these terrible shots and you're just kind of, you're having a good time, but you're really not doing well. And then you hit the shot that just goes in a glorious arc far away. Well, I have found that to be the same way with wine tasting. Some like this, I'm not sure I really am discerning everything I should, but then I've had New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs where I like green pepper and grass and grapefruit is just leaping out the glass for me. So I think that this is probably a skill that takes practice and that
And well, possibly, but it's not necessarily that it's a skill. Keep in mind, New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs are very dramatic.
Yeah.
They're, not every wine is that in-your-face dramatic with its aromas and profile. Other ones may be more subtle. And again, as I always like to say, if everyone had the same palate and the same nose,
there would
be 3 wines,
Yeah.
one white, one red, and one rosé.
Right.
So that's why everyone experiences things differently. That's why there's the same thing with perfumes. One person can love a perfume, and to somebody else, like some people love cilantro, to other people it tastes like soap. If that wasn't the case, then again. So everyone is going to experience something differently. So just because this person does happen to get figs from this wine, maybe you get raisins. So I always say it's whatever, whatever you experience from it, and if it happens to be your cup of tea, fabulous. If it's not, regardless of whether it's some highly rated wine, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like it.
Right. Okay.
So we've got we've experienced our little swirling. And another thing, to backtrack a little bit, you often hear people talk about legs of wine. And there's so much about that, or tears. Basically, all that's really telling you is the amount of alcohol that's in the wine. It's not telling you the quality of the wine, whether you're going to like it. It's just a function of the composition of that wine. So we've swirled our wine, we smelled our wine. Now, of course, we have to do the best part, which is taste the wine. Exactly.
Oh, that's right. We're tasting. We're not drinking. We're tasting.
That's true. And in this case, now here's another thing you want to be able to experience the wine rather than just going. There again, we're all playing with oxygen again here, and kids love this. They think this is just so silly. You want to try to kind of purse your lips and bring in some oxygen when you sip that wine, and it kind of makes a little burbling noise. And that's, again, vaporizing that wine and allowing it to kind of expand its molecules. The other thing, too, you don't want to swallow it right away. So you don't want to take such a big mouthful that you feel like you've got to swallow, but you want enough. You want a little short of maybe gargling, like with your mouthwash in the morning, but you want to swirl it around your mouth, because we all know we have different taste buds on various parts of our mouth, plus even in our cheeks. You know, we all know if you bite into a lemon, you know, you kind of feel like it's starting, the juices going in your cheeks, so you experience taste all around your mouth. So you want to be able to be sure that that wine gets all over your mouth so you can appreciate it.
Okay.
So we'll do the little burbling thing here. And yes, obviously if you were doing multiple tasting, you might want to spit out your wine, but in this case, we can go ahead and swallow it.
Yeah, we're only having one sip. Maybe two.
Maybe two. Maybe two. I think
very nice red wine.
So here, along with the idea that, of course, we could see this when we were looking at it, this is not a heavy-bodied wine. It's not trying to be. We saw that initially because I can see my hand through it. So this is not going to come across as a big, dramatic, overpowering.
Which is not what we'd expect from our climate.
Right. This is a lovely, it's certainly not, for instance, it's not our heaviest red, but it's just a wonderful, approachable, smooth finishing, food-friendly, incredibly drinkable red.
Yes. I would agree with that.
And what's nice about that, for those folks who maybe, and this is another thing that gets people laughing, another thing for the people who tend to be a little bit more of the tannin challenged, it's going to be, again, that more approachable.
Yeah.
It's not quite so much of that very dramatic, for them, the
dry your mouth,
feeling like it's sucking every bit of moisture out of their face.
Yeah.
So it's going to be smoother and hence much more food friendly. Certainly with a wider variety of foods than just your big steak.
Awesome. So why do you think somebody that doesn't know a real lot about wine should approach wine in this way versus, like, I mean, when people come to Casa Larga, I would imagine most people just take a sip, or do you take them through this?
We do, depending upon what their preference is.
Yeah.
If there's someone who's a Wine Lover Club member, or there's someone who's very familiar with wine, they are certainly well aware of that, and many will do that every time they sample a wine, particularly if it's for the first time. If there's someone who already knows they love that wine, and they just want a glass of it, and they want to go sit out on the patio, then yeah, they're probably not going to.
Right.
But it's just, again, it's the idea of being able to get a little bit of a preview of that wine before you actually even drink it. So it just heightens your experience of enjoying and learning about that wine.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for taking us through this.
Absolutely. Salute.
And thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.